guys, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I am Choma and welcome back to Double Dose of Chi. However, as I mentioned in my last vlog, we're actually doing a bit of a rebranding, so it's actually Chidi and Choma. But if you are new, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join the family. We're a family out in these streets, as I always love to say, and we are manifesting 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2025, and we would love the support, so join the family. Guys, we are back with another apartment hunting video, but this time we are actually looking for a place in Lagos, Nigeria. So if you couldn't tell or you couldn't gather from our names, both Chidi and I are Nigerian, born and raised in London, but we typically tend to go to Nigeria a couple of times in the year, so roughly around like 4, 5, maybe 6 times in the year we will find ourselves traveling to Abuja and also venturing out to Lagos as well. So you may be wondering, why is it that we're actually looking for a space in Lagos? Because we go back quite often. We actually launched a business in Nigeria called High Life Concierge, which requires us to be on the ground more often in the year. We thought it would make more sense to actually find a place that was permanent as opposed to spending thousands of pounds staying in hotels. And guys, if you are quite versed with Lagos and Lagos hotels in particular, not in the rude way, but there tends to be some issue when it comes to maintenance of these hotel spaces. And I have stayed in a fair few hotels in Lagos and they all tend to have the same issues when it comes to just maintaining the property. I think the last day we had at the Borough, after that we said no more. The amount of money that you spend for the service that you get, it just made more sense for us to start looking and actually finding a space which is more permanent in Lagos. So when it comes to the apartment hunting experience in Lagos, I would say it's kind of similar to that of New York, just going based on my understanding and my sister's understanding of what it was like when she was looking for an apartment in New York, is that you wouldn't be the ones that would be reaching out to the property owners or landlords. You would actually just be acting through an agent or like a version of a broker who you would give the specifications to them, and then obviously they try and find what it is that you are looking for. So in terms of what we were actually looking for, we were looking for a space that was located in Ikoyi. We were happy to venture into VI, but we knew that Ikoyi would be the location that we actually wanted the property to be in. If you go to Nigeria, you guys know that a lot of the action or activity happens on the island, and the 3 main locations is Lekki Phase 1, Ikoyi and Victoria Island. We weren't really a fan of Lekki. Well, I don't know about Chidi, but I'm not a fan of Lekki. We both love Ikoyi. We tend to always try and stay in Ikoyi when we're in Lagos, be it with Airbnbs or the hotels that we now stay in. And so then we know the area pretty well, and so we wanted the place to be in an area that we actually knew. So we were looking for a 2/3 bed apartment on a single level. We really wanted 24-hour security, and that was something that we really pushed and made known to the agents that we were working with, that that's something that we were specifically looking for. So that was a combination of the gatemen and actual army men, so it would be combined. We were looking for that kind of security. And then another non-negotiable for us is that we needed the space to have natural light, and a lot of natural light. We are content creators, we love natural light. I also thrive with natural light, and so that was something that we really wanted in the apartment that we were looking for in Lagos. One thing that we really did not want on these windows were those bars, and it's a common thing in Lagos, Abuja, and I can only speak for the East, in Port Harcourt and Aba, that they have those bars on the windows. We didn't want that. We didn't want any of that. It gives like I've been locked up, and I just don't like that vibe. I understand it's for security purposes, but we would hope that the place that we were going to have the property in was secure enough that it didn't require those bars. And if it did have those bars, it just gives the sense that that place isn't secure enough to not have it on the property. We needed a lift in the location because ideally we wanted it to be single level, so that would be in an apartment block 9 times out of 10. We were also looking for a modern apartment, so something similar to where we kind of currently stay now in London. So my flat in London is similar to my sister's flat in DC. If you've seen the apartment tours, it'll be roughly around that kind of aesthetic that we were looking for. We wanted the property to be located on a decent road, and when I say by decent, I just didn't want a lot of potholes on the road. Guys, if you know Lagos, you know some of their roads can be a little bit roller coaster-esque, and so we just wanted one that wouldn't be that bad. We didn't want it to be located on a street where there was like a known nightclub or like a really famous restaurant that tends to get quite busy. The Lagos night scene is very popular, it's very known, it's very renowned. We were just fearful that there'll just be cars lining the streets and then we will be struggling to get to and from our property, and that's not what we were looking for. And then we also wanted 24-hour light. Yes guys, we know about NEPA. We know. We wanted a situation that if NEPA had taken light, that a generator would kick in automatically. property. That's if the building developers or the people managing the building were in charge of the metering. We just didn't want a situation where it would be like 2-3 hours downtime. So those are basically our non-negotiables. And then when it came to things that we would love to have, or it would be nice if it did have, it would be nice if it had a gym. It wasn't like the end of the world if there was no gym in the apartment, because we would just go to one of those external gyms that we now know of. Likewise, like it would have been nice to have a pool, really just for aesthetics and take pictures, but it wasn't the be all or end all if there was no pool as part of the property development. It would be nice if the kitchen had an island. When we go to Nigeria, we're not actually intending to cook. We will most likely hire a private chef to cook for us. The budget that we had in mind was between £300,000 and £400,000. So that's basically what we were looking for when we went in to look at these houses that we were shown. In totality, we were shown 7 different flats, apartments, or houses all together by this one agent. And this was split up between 2 different trips that we had last year. So the first one in October and the second one in December. So without further ado, let's get into the first flat. So the first property we saw was actually on Banana Island Road, I believe it's called. But as we were driving up to the property, I already saw the exterior and I was not amused. To be fair, had I known that that was the property we were going to see, I would have brought out my camera, but because I didn't think that's where we were going, I didn't think to film the exterior, but it was bad. It was really, really bad. If you can just see as we're walking through the courtyard, but you can see from the walls that there was a lot of discoloration and a lot of mold as well. The place did have a pool, but it had no pool chairs or any form of furnishing surrounding the pool. Like, it's clear that this pool was purely for decoration and decoration alone. Then it came to the actual flat. This flat that we saw was a 3-bed, 3-bath property, and it was located on the 3rd floor. FYI, this place had no lift and it had no light. It had no AC. So the first thing I saw were the toilets, and they were really unpleasant to see. The fixtures were mismatched and oddly placed. I really wasn't a fan of the roof, specifically the tiles and the walls. I didn't love how they was just different tile patterns. There was no cohesion throughout the whole property. The only plus size of the rooms and the bathrooms, they actually were of a decent size. So they were on par to the bathroom I have currently in my flat in London, as well as the bedroom in my flat in London. The spacing was good. I will say this, the space did bring in a lot of natural light. The kitchen was also of a decent size, however, a big however, we were told that we would have to basically supply everything in the kitchen, which we really weren't willing to do. And it would also have to gut the kitchen anyway, because the way that the island was stationed, the way that the cabinets were, none of the fixtures in this kitchen we loved anyway, so we were going to have to basically start from the bottom. That would require additional money that we weren't willing to put into this property. One thing that was clear about the space is that it did not have 24-hour light, which is a little bit frustrating, because when we spoke to them about 24-hour light, they was like, yeah, there's 24-hour light. It's like, but the ACs aren't working, the lights aren't working, it isn't 24-hour light, and you also don't have lift. It just wasn't giving what we needed it to give. And then we asked about like the service charge and how that was calculated. We weren't a massive fan that when we spoke to the person that was showing us around, that he had no idea what we were talking about. That even our agent was just like, how can you not know what we're talking about? Like, what is it? He didn't have the answer. So immediately when he was just like, I don't know what you're talking about, we just said, let's leave. So the first flat we saw was a no from us. So on to the second apartment. This place shocked my sister and I, because we were not told that this place was still under construction. But we could already tell from the outside that this place wasn't for us. This was a giant yellow building. As we were walking up, we were not a fan of the tiles on the floor. It was just given mosaic. Before we went to go see the properties, we actually first went to go and see the amenities, because the space was still under construction. There was a lot of things that weren't completely finished, but we were able to just see and get an understanding of what was going to be on offer when the place was actually finished. First thing that we saw was the pool and where the pool would be situated. There was also going to be a gym. They then showed us where the generators were going to be located, and then informed us that there was going to be 24-hour light in this property. They also did tell us that there would be security guards. I think at this property there was only going to be 4 security guards, 1 gate man and 3 army men. Because there was no light, because the place was still under construction, we had to go up the stairs, and the walkway to the lift, it was actually really so narrow. Once again, I was not a fan of the mosaic tiles that were lining everywhere. Then we went to the flat, and because obviously the space was still under construction, everything was still so dusty. But as soon as we walked in, on the left hand side we saw the guest toilet first. It was actually pretty good size. We just didn't understand how they chose like a grey interior for the bathrooms, but then they had the yellow walls for the rest of the property. The living area also was of a really nice size. It was really spacious, and I loved the amount of natural light that was coming into this property. It had no bars on the windows. The balcony was also really nice and really huge, and it did oversee where the pool would be situated. Then we went into the kitchen, and as you can see, I was trying my best not to touch anything. It was really small in comparison to the living room. When we walked into the kitchen, we weren't a massive fan of the wooden cabinet style that was chosen. Throughout the process, we just have to remind ourselves, like, with any property you can renovate, so this is just a canvas for you, and you just see how much effort you want to put in to make it up to the standard that you want. Then we went to go check on the bedrooms, and once again, I didn't love the tiles, I didn't love the color of the walls. The color scheme was just different, and it was different across all the various different rooms. However, the saving grace of the bedrooms was the natural light. There was a lot of natural light coming into these rooms. None of the windows had bars on it, which was really nice to see, so it just gave us a sense of safety that would come if we were to stay in a place like this. Unfortunately, when I saw the second bedroom in this property, there was this massive pole chilling in the middle of the room. Like, not one of those support beams, like a full-on pole just right through the window, which isn't the safest. Then I went into the bathrooms, and they weren't the best. It felt like the fixtures were already falling off, which is odd because these are bathrooms which are newly constructed. It's weird to see that the fixtures are already falling off when they've just been put on. Then I went to the third bedroom. I was not a massive fan of this layout at all, but once again, like the other bedrooms, there was a lot of natural light, and that was the saving grace of the space, was the amount of natural light that was coming in from all the different rooms. Now, what we didn't love about the space, as you can see, it would require a lot of additional work, which we weren't willing to put in, especially given the price that it was coming at already. So really and truly, this was going to be a no for us as well. Then moving on to the third apartment. This place was also located on VI. This was another 3-bed and 3-bath apartment. So as we were driving up to this space, the outside was a lot better. It was giving what I had wanted it to give. It was just an all-white facade, and you can clearly see the amount of security at the very beginning, because they made us wait a hot minute before they allowed us to actually access the compound where the property was, which is great. This feeling that we had was short-lived, and I will explain why this is. So as we walked in, there was air conditioning. We could feel the air conditioning, so I was like, okay, cool, perfect, light. There was a lift. I was like, okay, amazing, there's a lift. We go into the lift, and the property was located on the 4th floor. However, we got stuck in between the 3rd and 4th floor, to the point that the door had to be forced open, and we had to then climb out to get out of the lift, which was not ideal. But as we walked in, there was barely any light. There was none. And also, because there was still tenants in the property, obviously then we had to think, okay, is it that there's no light because there's no light, or is there no light because the tenant didn't want the light on? Like I said, there were tenants in this apartment, so I only got a few clips on my phone. The living room was dark and oddly decorated. However, I 100% believe that was more to do with the people who are currently staying in the property as opposed to it actually being oddly decorated. But in terms of the basic layout, it was the best apartment we had seen so far. The bathrooms are also really, really big. I loved how it had a his and her sink, and I loved the mirror, which was an LED mirror, which would come with the apartment. It also had like a mini jacuzzi in the bathroom, which I'm not mad at. The kitchen was also a really nice size. It was really modern, had a huge island. So something that I didn't really love about the kitchen was that it did have bars. I did not like. However, physically seeing the security outside, I wasn't too fussed about it being a security issue. It was more of a natural light issue more than anything. But to be honest, in comparison to the first 2 apartments that we saw that day, this was the best one that we had seen so far. Now, the last apartment that we saw on this particular day was the best apartment we had seen. This has been one of the best apartments that I've seen ever in Lagos, even in London, even though I've seen apartments in DC. This apartment was a very, very, very nice apartment. So when we went there, we were actually shown around by the property developer, who we found out was actually British. The space was a 3-bed and 3-bath, and it was located in Ikoyi. This was a new apartment that had just been released, and you can tell that everything was so fresh, everything was so clean. We walked in, I was like, yes, this is a bit of me, I can't lie. We were first shown the amenities, and the amenities that we were shown consisted of a pool and a gym. I could see myself using this pool. I probably wouldn't, but the idea of having this pool, it was really nice. We then went to the gym, and I'm not gonna sit here and be like it's the best gym I've ever seen, but in terms of an apartment gym, it was pretty okay. And we actually were told that more equipment would come over time. Then we went to go and see the apartment, and we both instantly fell in love. Each room had its own ensuite, walk-in wardrobe or an integrated wardrobe, and it was air conditioned. We loved the color scheme. The developer really understood the colors that would make the space feel inviting and then make the space look massive. So I went to the primary room first and foremost, and the bathroom in this room, the bathroom had my heart. I love the his and her sink. It was gorgeous. I love the play and the use of the different textures that they used. So it was nice, but it wasn't too overbearing. The walk-in closet had more than enough space for your stuff. I then went to another room which had a similar style, and the bathroom was a completely different aesthetic, but it still worked. It had a lighter aesthetic in this room. Once again, it was still very inviting when you walked in. I love the use of the wood on the vanity unit and the mirror, and even though there was not a lot of natural light coming in, the way that they had placed the lighting in the bathroom made it feel just very bright, very spacious, very warm, very inviting. And then the third bedroom didn't have a walk-in closet, but do you see this integrated closet on the wall? It was so nice, and I love how it was integrated and didn't take away from the space of the bedroom, so the bedroom was still a very good size. Oh, and I love the use of the lights as well underneath. Even though this was the smallest room in the apartment, it still felt really big. And then I went to the bathroom and I was here for the fixtures and the finishing touches. All the rooms were designed perfectly. Unfortunately, I didn't take a clip of the living room and the kitchen area, but these spaces were huge, had floor to ceiling windows. The kitchen was massive, it had an island, and if you saw the bedrooms and the bathrooms, you can just imagine that the living room and the kitchen were of a similar level. Now the downside. So the security offerings weren't too great, and then when it came to the service charge, it was that even if you weren't in the property and you weren't consuming anything, you were still required to split the bill among all the tenants in the development. So you might not be there for like 6 months of the year, but you're still required to pay for the usage that other tenants who had been there had used during those 6 months. But guys, that flat was going for 1.2 billion naira. It's going for 1.2 billion naira. So for context, that's equivalent to £570,000 and like $750,000. No, just no. Like, it's different if the Nigerian property market or real estate operated similar to that of London. I can't speak for America, but I can speak of that in the UK, where the property value increases over the years and you can pull out money from that property. But from my understanding, you don't get that same benefit in Nigeria. So you're spending that £570,000 and you get no benefit from it in the long run. So whilst it was nice, just didn't make any sense that you spent all that money for no gain. We were slightly frustrated at our agent, who would show us something that was completely out of our budget, knowing what our budget was. So the next set of apartments is what we saw when we came back during the Christmas period, and we kind of changed what we were looking for to our agent. We realized that the budget that we were given wasn't yielding what it is that we were looking for. So we then started to incorporate different types of properties, so ones that were a little bit more off plan, to see whether or not that would have an impact in what would be provided. And so the first apartment that we saw when we went back in December was a property that was off plan. So that moves us on to the fifth apartment, and this one was located in Victoria Island. As it was under construction, we had to wear safety hats because this building was literally like brick. There was nothing there, but it was quite nice to see like the processes of them building and all that kind of jazz. It was quite a fun experience. So the first floor I'm showing, from what I remember, this was the floor where all the amenities would be. So like a games room, there'll be a co-working space, they'll also have the gym, would all be on this floor. They did also say it would have floor to ceiling windows, but obviously because it was under construction, there was no light, so we had to go up the stairs to the property, which is located on the first floor. So this property, or this apartment, was a 3-bed and 3-bathroom. I went to go see the primary room first. It was actually really big, and there was a lot of natural light coming in, which was a massive plus, and it didn't have any bars on the window, which is what we love to see. Although the bathroom wasn't done, you could see how big the space would be. They said that there was going to be a bathtub, a shower, and then you would have the sink and the toilet, and it was given that there was a lot of space in that bathroom. And then there was also this little section where there was going to be like a walk-in wardrobe per se. However, the workers, bless them, had put all their stuff in it, but it was a sizable space. And then went to the next room, which was a lot smaller than I anticipated. Like the first room I saw, it was bringing in a lot of natural light, and that was something that we both loved about it. It also had a decent sized bathroom. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see the last bedroom just because, like I said, it was under construction and there was a lot of materials in there, so I wasn't physically able to even remotely go inside. But I did see the kitchen space, so you can see the kitchen space was going to be huge. There was so much space. They did also mention there was going to be a kitchen island in the middle as well. I wasn't able to see the living area. I don't know if you saw at the end of the clip of the kitchen, there was just no windows, and so they said I wasn't allowed to go there just because it wouldn't be safe for me to walk there. As it was under construction, there was no way that we can test if it had 24-hour light. They said it would, but there's no way to test that. They did mention about the service charge, which is what you pay, what you use. The only issue we had with this apartment was that it was on the road with Hotbox. Had it not been on the road with Hotbox, we wouldn't have minded too much, but it's only because it was on the road of the club that we just weren't particularly fond of that. And we're really a little bit fearful that not only is it on the road with Hotbox, but it's also going to be a situation, it might be like what we ordered versus what we got. Then we went to the next place, which was in Ikoyi, but it was off the beat and track, and there was like nothing by it. It was just really bad roads leading up to the space. As we arrived to the compound of the space, there was actually quite a bit of security. However, we had made it very known that we wanted a property that was single level, whereas what we were shown was a maisonette or like a house, which is not what we were looking for. This was a 4-bed and 4-bath property which had 3 different floors. The ground floor living area was actually really big, and you could see there was a lot of natural light as you walked into the property, so that was really nice. And then as you went to the back, you had the kitchen. The kitchen was very dark, and you could see the bars in the windows. The door was blacked out, which was weird. We didn't understand why that was, because the agent was the one showing us around, and he himself also didn't know about the space. I did love how though the kitchen did come with the appliances, which they said would be ours when we moved in if we were to buy this space. Before I went upstairs, I went to go see the ground floor toilet. It was not nice. It was really bad how as soon as I opened the door, see there's a lot of paint buckets or building materials left in the way, so you couldn't really go into the toilet to see it properly. It also had a really weird sewage smell. Then we went to the rooms, and the rooms were not giving at all. All the rooms had bars on the windows, which we did not want, and that was one of our non-negotiables. And then it also just takes away from the natural light and just makes the space look darker because of the shadows. Then I went to the bathroom. The bathroom was actually a pretty decent size, but because it was so dirty, it was hard to go inside, and plus all the bathrooms had this really strong sewage smell. And so it made us then think, is there something wrong with the plumbing? Is there something wrong with the sewage? Because it cannot be all the bathrooms across the 3 floors have a very potent sewage smell coming from them. To be fair, we ended up leaving soon after that. There was no light, there was no AC, it was boiling hot, it smelled really badly, there was bars all over the windows, and it was really far from the main road. So all of those all together were just red flags that made us come to the conclusion that yeah, this probably isn't the space for us. So the last apartment we went to go see was also in Ikoyi. It was a 3-bed and 3-bath. This one once again was off the beaten track, but what was actually better about this place in comparison to the last place is that it was kind of in like a gated community in Ikoyi. However, between that entrance to where the property was located felt like you were trekking to Mount Kilimanjaro. It was far. What was really sad is that when we were driving through this community, there were so many buildings actually gorgeous, like drop dead beautiful, to the point I even asked my sister, like, I hope the one that we're driving up to is ours, because it was so nice, it was so modern, floor to ceiling windows, beautiful balconies. Alas, that wasn't the property we were going to view. The one we went to, poorly maintained. So as soon as we walked in, we felt the heat. There was no power, there was no AC. We asked about 24-hour light. He said yes, there is, but then they weren't going to put on the light for a viewing, so there was no way we can test it. So as soon as I walked in, I went to the first bathroom, which was not cleaned at all. It stunk. It was really, really bad how bad that smell was. It was clearly used by somebody and it had not been cleaned, so there was just a number 2 just left in the toilet. It was given that they didn't even check the space before doing the viewing. Why is there a number 2 left in the toilet? The fixtures made no sense. The flooring was uneven. The bedrooms though were actually pretty big. They had a lot of natural light coming in. There was no bars on the windows. It just felt bright and spacious. But overall, the apartment was a no from us. I went to go see the other bathrooms, and once again there was like remnants of a number 2 left in another toilet, and then the other toilet that I went to go see just had a very strong sewage smell. It was really, really bad, and I don't understand why they would allow for that to be the first impression of this property. Like, at least do a sweep before you show us, because there should not be number 2 left in a toilet or remnants of number 2 left in another toilet. There's only 3 toilets in this apartment. And that was the last flat that we ended up seeing in our flat hunting, house hunting journey in Lagos. And that's it, guys. That's basically the end of this video of our first couple of viewings that we saw in Lagos, just to get a sense of what was out there and understand the flat hunting scene, because it's something that neither my sister or I have ever really experienced before. We had learned a lot from this experience, and the main takeaway that we got from this was that with the budget that we had for our house, it wasn't going to give us what we wanted. It seems that you would have to put in more money to get what we were looking for in Lagos. So what we've now actually done is that we have changed our approach completely. We are no longer looking to buy property in Lagos. We actually had quite a few conversations with friends who live in Lagos, and what we have now decided to do is that we are going to rent a space in Lagos, and we're going to approach getting a property in Lagos that way. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please like, comment and subscribe. We would love the support as we are on the road to get 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. If you actually liked any of the apartments we saw, then definitely leave a comment down below, because we're interested to hear what you have to say. And if you feel that our approach wasn't good and we needed to tailor it or change it, do let us know. Neither my sister or I are experts in flat hunting in Lagos. We've never done it before, and so if you are experienced in it and you have tips and tricks that would help us, please, we would love for you to list them down below. But anyway guys, that is it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.